Time is now 7:30 p.m. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Old Bridge Township Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting for June 15th, 2023. I am James Sullivan. As chairman of the board, I would ask you now to join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of our country. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic that stands one nation under God, indivisible,
with liberty
and
and
justice
for all.
Adequate notice of this meeting of the Old Bridge Township Zoning Board of Adjustment has been provided in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act at least 48 hours prior to the commencement of this meeting by prominently posting in the municipal complex an announcement giving the time, the date, the location, and the agenda of this meeting. Also by mailing such announcement to the Home News and Tribune, filing such announcement with the municipal clerk, and finally posting the agenda on the municipal website. Ms. C, good evening. May we have a roll call, please?
Chairman Sullivan.
Here.
Mr. Connor is absent. Mr. Stoner is absent. Ms. Chevalier.
Here.
Mr. Scogno.
Here.
Ms. Andrews.
Here.
Ms. Testaverde.
Here.
Mr. Izzo.
Here.
Mr. Clancy.
Here.
Mr. Gill.
Here.
And myself, Ms. C. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. C. We have 5 members this evening, correct? You said Stone. I don't see Mr. Stoner and Mr. Connor, right?
Correct. We have 5 voting and 1 alternate.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. This meeting is being conducted as a webinar on the internet. It is unique and it takes a little patience on all the people involved, particularly applicants who are not familiar with it, because we're gathered in our own homes or offices versus being in the courtroom live. While we are live, we're not sitting together in the same meeting room. This meeting is also being televised by OBTV Cable 15, as well as YouTube Live. I remind anyone watching on any device that there's up to a 30-second delay in communications. This will be important to remember if you wish to personally join a public portion at any time. Anyone calling in must lower their device or you will be confused by the time delay. I ask all participants at this particular moment to silence their cell phones to avoid any disturbances during the meeting. Our meeting follows the same protocols as if we were in the courtroom. There's just a couple general, we don't have any general housekeeping matters tonight. We will be moving right on to applications. There are 3 of them. I do think we have one not a continuance, but it's being delayed, I think. It's being carried. Other than that, it would be unlikely that we'd need a recess this evening, so we'll probably move right through. If you are interested in any of the applications, you're not an applicant, but you wanted to speak on it, take some notes while the application goes on. The public portion will go on after the person testifies as to what they're looking to do. So if you take some notes, it'll refresh your memory when you call in on the numbers that'll be posted on the device, any device you're watching this evening. Ms. C, I'm going to turn it over to you for all the other things that I might have forgotten.
Thank you. As Mr. Chairman noted, we only have applications on for this evening, and so the zoning board attorney, chairman, secretary will remain unmuted throughout the meeting. Everyone else will be muted. Once the presentation for an application begins, the applicant's professionals will be asked to turn on their video and unmute themselves in the order in which they will testify. For the public, I will announce the last 4 digits of the caller's phone number to come forward and announce your name and address. I will also announce the last 4 digits of the next caller's phone number so that they can be prepared. We will share our screen to display any exhibits. The meeting information will be displayed on the screen multiple times during the meeting so that any resident who wishes to call in and join the meeting can do so. Please be patient. You will have an opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. C. Good evening, members. Good evening, Mr. Clancy. We'll move right forward as we have no housekeeping issues, and I'll call the first one in, although it's not going to be heard this evening. 23-2023Z. It's Deli Simbula. The physical address is 34 Farnbrook Drive. It's to legitimize an expansion of a driveway. That matter will not be heard this evening. It's going to be carried to the July 20th, 2023 meeting. There will be further notice. If you're watching on that matter tonight, or you were planning on speaking on it, it is going to be carried until July 20th with further notice. That moves us right on to our next application. It's 25-2023Z. William Montemurno, I should say. It's the R5 zone block 611 lot 61 lot 458. The physical location is 458 Harding Road. This is for a deck requiring a C variance. Applicant proposes to construct a deck in the rear yard of the property. Is William here? Or whoever might be representing that application?
Mr. Chairman, I just promoted him to a panelist, so he should be joining shortly.
Downs on behalf of Mr. Montemiro, sir.
Oh, Mr. Downey, good evening, sir.
Good, how are you?
I would, now that he's under advice of counsel, I have no need to tell him how to proceed on this. We'll turn it over to you, sir.
Okay, this is an application that Mr. Montemiro has already constructed on site. Various improvements, a deck. He increased the size of the deck to square it off to the size of the house, and he also put in a sliding glass door, which is larger than the prior sliding glass door. As I understand it, in looking at the application, we're dealing with impervious lot coverages as well as some side yard setback issues. Would you care for Mr. Montemiro to give his take on what he's doing? You can swear him in and we can have him testify.
Sure, Mr. Dents.
And here he is, he's right here to my right. He's raised.
I see. Mr. Clancy?
Sir, if you could just raise your right hand, do you solemnly swear that any testimony you provide before this board will be the truth and the whole truth?
I do.
Okay, you can lower your hand and just state your name for the record, please.
William Montemurno,
Thank you, sir.
William, where do you reside?
458 Harding Road, Lawrence Harbor.
And that's the address that's the subject of this application. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Tell the board what you wanted to do with the property.
Well, I had an existing deck in the yard, and the main reason was to build a bigger deck. Was my wife has mobility issues, and it's just real convenient for her to get outside with the deck. I didn't realize that it would be too big. If I did it the way the township wanted me to do, there really wouldn't be much of a deck at all. I mean, I have a beautiful view of Marquee Creek back there. I don't know if anybody's familiar with it, and we enjoy sitting out there. And retired 3 years now, and I raised 5 kids in Lawrence Harbor. Been there since 1990. Lived in this house 20 years, and I just wanted to make it more comfortable there. And now being retired, I had the money to do it. So that's my story.
Okay, so what you're looking at, you have looking at the denial of the application, denial of the zoning permit. Your side yard is only going to be three feet, and the minimum is 11. Now,
Yeah.
this what you constructed is substantially the same what's in the area with other homes in the area. Is that correct?
Pretty much, yeah.
And these are all these old former Lawrence Harbor bungalows that were converted
Right.
to.
I don't have much of a yard to begin with, and I just it's easier, the house is probably 5 feet off the ground in the back, and it's more convenient for my wife to just be able to walk out the back door onto the deck.
Okay, now, will the improvements impair the intent and purpose of the zoning ordinance?
I don't think so.
And it will be an increase in the tax rate to the township, is that correct?
I would imagine so, yeah.
Do you need side yards, the lot coverage is that you indicated you have a small lot and basically the lot coverage was already pretty much,
Yeah,
Pretty
I
much
believe
there, right?
the backyard's only 25 feet, across,
Mhm.
and the whole lot itself, I think, is 80,
80 by 50 or 80 by
uh,
25.
25.
Right, that's all the questions I have with respect to the application, sir.
Uh, Thank you, Mr. Downs. I just had one question, sir. You said that your wife is somewhat disabled, so that she can't get around. So
Well, she has mobility issues, she has osteopenia, and she needs a knee replacement, and she has hip problems, and she has other medical issues also.
so she can actually just get out of the house, I guess, through whatever exit there and
Yeah,
get onto the porch.
but it makes it more convenient for her to have this deck there, yeah.
Right.
This way she
Okay.
can go outside and sit if she wants to.
Okay. All right. We're going to turn it to Mr. Gill. Are you here?
I am, Chairman.
Oh, there you go. Why don't you talk to the board about the variance, please?
Good evening. Mr. Downey took a lot of my thunder having referred to my denial letter, but I will trudge on. As the applicant has indicated, or the application has indicated, the proposal is to construct a 14 by 16 foot deck, 3.5 feet above grade. And it will be 3 feet from the side property line on the left side where a minimum of 11 feet is required. Total improvements additionally bring the landscape area ratio from 41.8, which is roughly 11, or brings it to 1164.25, where a maximum or a minimum open space of 1,100 square feet is required. So there are two variances being sought here. There's a variance for the side yard because it's too close to the side property line, and for lot coverage. I think there's two things that are important to note that the applicant touched on a little bit, is that the lot is undersized. It's 25 by 80. And the applicant, Mr. Montemorno, explained that, building a compliant deck was not practically feasible. I'd like to flesh that out a little bit. What that means is in the harbor, the R5 zone, the deck setback is related to the height of the deck off grade. So it starts at 7 feet, and then for every foot or fraction of a foot above 2 feet, we have to add 2 feet to the setback. So a 7 foot setback becomes 11 foot because this is 1.5 feet taller than a 2 foot allowance that the ordinance gives you by default. To make the deck lower would have to create steps to come down from the slider, which, as Mr. Montemorno explained, would have been not practical because of the whole purpose of the deck for his wife. Additionally, it's already been constructed. This deck was constructed and we're seeking to legitimize it. For him to build a compliant deck, he'd only be able to have 3 foot, which is essentially a landing, because an 11-foot setback on either side requires a 22-foot total setback, and the property is only 25 feet wide. That creates some practical difficulty and may constitute a hardship, since the zone requires a 50-foot lot width for these structures. But this is an existing condition that we have to deal with, that Mr. Montemorno is dealing with. Additionally, the landscape area ratio is partially created by the undersized nature of the lot. A 5,000-foot lot requirement is mandated for this zone, and the property is 25 by 80, which my simple math never works. So I will do the math real quick. It's 2,000 square feet. So there's a 3,000 square foot deficiency. That stated, he's got a de minimis deficiency of approximately 64.25 square feet. He likely could have made the deck slightly smaller to comply with that. But again, since we couldn't avoid the side yard setback variance, the applicant has opted to request relief in toto from the board. That's why they're here this evening, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Gill. This is quite common that we've seen down in that area of the township, correct?
Yeah, the harbor is always a difficult because we don't want to lower the standards too much, where impervious coverage becomes everything and it becomes the norm. But the reality is practical improvements like this in the harbor can sometimes be pretty difficult without a variance.
All right. Thank you very much. Board members, questions of the applicant, if you can raise your hand if you have any. I see none. Mr. Clancy, this kind of borders on a hardship, does it not?
Yes, this is the hardship application, it appears. The only question I had was, since it's already been built, any issues with the neighbors so far?
Well, we're going to find that out, I guess. Mr. Gill, you saw the deck, I'm assuming, right?
I did not. My colleague went out to do the inspection on this one. I did see aerials because this was constructed in 2022. Our software shows it to us, so I can say with relative certainty that what is being proposed was what was constructed. And I believe the survey that was provided to the applicant is actually an as-built, which documents the deck as it exists today. If you see the date that the survey was prepared was August 2022. The application was filed in October that we ultimately denied.
Okay. Anything else from you, Mr. Downs, before I go to a public portion?
No,
And last chance for any of the board members if you have a question. I see no hands. I'm going to go to open the public portion. This is 25-2023Z. This is the location is 458 Harding Road, Lawrence Harbor. This is a deck that has already been built. It would appear to be a hardship because of the size of the lot. This setback issue and landscape area ratio. There are phone numbers in front of you. If you are watching and you have any concern on this matter, I would ask you to please call in now. This will be the only public portion on this matter. It will be finished to this evening. To see, is there anyone in queue?
There are no raised hands.
Once again, if you are watching from any device and you wanted to speak on this matter, tonight will be the only time to do so. If you have a interest, please call one of the phone numbers. Mr. Clancy, how about proper timing on this?
Yeah, we've had the numbers up for just coming up on a minute now, so I think it would be appropriate if we don't see anybody in the queue to close at this point, public portion.
Thank you. Ms. C, anyone in queue?
There are no raised hands.
Okay, I'm going to go back to Mr. Downs. Any final comments, sir?
as we've indicated, this is it's already built. It will not impair the intent purpose of the zoning ordinance. As Mr. Montemuro indicated, his wife is got some handicaps and mobility issues, and this gives her an opportunity to at least get out and get some fresh air. It's a typical Lawrence Harbor bungalow that was converted. I mean, this building was built back in the 1920s, and going forward, and in the years that I've been doing real estate in Old Bridge, this is the norm. That type of building on that type of lot is the norm for Lawrence Harbor.
It is, and there's a lot of the board members that have seen these come. There's a lot of board members that have sat for a number of years, and they have seen these issues, in particular when it comes down to the harbor. There's a lot of hardship on those size lots. I have closed the public portion. Board members, is someone interested in moving this for an approval?
Motion to approve Scogno.
Okay, this is for, I can take both votes at once, Mr. Clancy, correct, for the landscape, for the side yard and for the landscape area, or do you want them separate?
I think we can do them at the same time without an issue here, as long as we make them clear. So this is for total coverage of 41.8%, where the minimum was 45. And then we have a side yard setback of 3 feet where 11 is required. I know for clarity's sake, at the beginning of this, there was some mention about an issue with the door size. Is there no relief needed for that?
No, I don't think Damien could be able to answer that better than me.
I believe what happened was that this was born of a violation of work done without permits, and there were UCC concerns because enlarging the opening required permitting, which wasn't obtained, but there is no relief needed through the zoning board for our purposes here.
Okay, so Mr. Chairman, it would just be for those two. And if Mr. Scogno's motion is for both of them, then I think we can move forward.
Is it for both, Mr. Scogno?
Yes, that's correct, sir.
Okay, is there a second?
Izzo second.
Mr. Rizzo seconds, roll call, please.
Ms. Chevalier,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
Yes.
Ms. Andrews,
Yes.
Ms. Testaverde,
Yes.
Mr. Izzo,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
It's great that you're taking care of your wife there and getting her outside where she's not cooped in the house. I do know the hardships down there. My vote is yes, sir. There would be a resolution available at our next meeting, Mr. Downs.
And will the board publish it, or would it be the applicant's obligation to publish?
Mr. Clancy?
That's a good question. I'll get the answer for you.
Yeah, I've never heard it, the applicant publishing. Ms. C?
Chairman, if I may, yeah,
ahead.
the township would publish.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Okay.
Mhm.
Different towns, different rules, Chairman.
Right. Well, thank you for bringing that up, Mr.
I gotta be sure, so I don't blow the resolution.
Okay. Yeah, it'll be
Thank you very
available.
much, ladies and gentlemen. Have a good evening.
Thank you. I
Great. Thank you,
appreciate
Mr. Downs,
it.
for your
Thank you very much.
appearance,
Thank you.
and sir, thank you for your application.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Bye-bye.
Right. We'll move to our next one, 21-2023Z. That's Christopher Sherrington. This is R5. It's block 1061, lot 270. The location, physical location is 270 Raritan Boulevard for a C variance. This is for a pool. Is Mr. Sherrington here? There he is. I see him.
Yes, Chairman. Good evening, everyone.
Because you're representing yourself, I'm just going to tell you a couple of things, Mr. Sherrington. What you need to do is, this is a judicial hearing, so there's certain things you have to put on the record. So what I'd like you to do is tell the board what you're doing, why you want to do it, or if you did it already. The zoning officer will tell us why it's in violation and needs a variance. But proceed as to, as the previous man just explained, he did it for his own purposes, for his family and for his wife's illness, I guess, and disability. You want to put in a pool, sir? Why don't you just talk to us about it?
Yes, yep. Thank you, Chairman, and members of the committee. Good evening. I'm applying for a C variance based on my landscape ratio area of 45%, and it will fall below that to a total amount of 39.8%, with the addition of a 15 by 10 foot above ground pool. This will be located at the rear of my property, adjacent to my deck, at least 10 to 15 feet away from my neighbor's property and areas of fence in there. So,
Mr. Sherrington, sorry to interrupt. Are you going to be the only one providing testimony on this?
yes.
Okay, I'm just going to put you under oath so that.
Okay, yes, sir.
My mistake,
testimony-
Mr. Clancy, I'm sorry.
Not at all. All he did so far was just describe the application. So, Mr. Sherrington, if you could just raise your right hand, please. And do you swear any testimony that you provide before the board will be the truth and the whole truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay, put your hand down and just state your name for the record.
Christopher Lee Sherrington.
Thank you, sir.
You can continue where you left off, sir.
Yes, so the application, currently my landscape ratio area needs to be 45%. With the addition of this pool, it will fall below that. That's the reason why I'm applying for a C variance in order to build the pool. And as I mentioned before, the landscape ratio area with the addition of the pool will fall below that 45% and to the total amount of 39.8%. So 5.2% under that landscape area ratio that is required. Yep, it's I guess pretty straightforward. Any questions from the board?
I'm assuming this is for your family's use, maybe
Yes.
you have a growing family or?
Yep, two young daughters that are growing up and looking to just have something that they can exercise in, in the summer months. And I haven't built the pool yet. This is actually an application for the pool to be built. So
Yeah, understood. Okay, thank you very much. Board members, any questions for Mr. Sherrington at this point? No, let me ask Mr. Gill why we need a variance.
Thank you, Chairman. I think the applicant, Mr. Sherrington, did a really good job of describing the application. I do have a slight discrepancy in the landscape area ratio. My colleague Danny pointed out the landscape area ratio at 42.2 as opposed to the 39.8, but I think his approach is more conservative, and I think it would be wise for the board to just accept that standard and weigh the application at that more conservative number. But to flesh that out, a 39.8% landscape area ratio constitutes a 260 square foot deviation from what is permitted to what is proposed. The pool is 147 square feet. So the pool in and of itself, without this pool, the lot is already deficient due to the driveway, the house, and the existing deck. Now, I say that to say that the applicant could not propose a pool installation on this property that would be conforming. He would have to remove improvements that were already on the property. And as you can see from the survey that was provided, there's a substantial deck in the rear yard and a couple shed, I think a shed and a pretty nice sized driveway, which I think is a premium in the in that area of town. It's not common that people have off-street parking. But that being the case, the applicant did post the pool or propose to install the pool in a location where the only variance that's being created is a landscape area ratio variance for coverage. I don't know that Mr. Sherrington discussed the possibility of removing any improvements on the property. Normally, we are arguing that, the lot is undersized in this area. This happens to be a conforming lot. So we can't avail ourselves of that situation. But I would just posit to him whether or not he considered removing any of these improvements to try to do that and why he opted to go this way.
Mr. Sherrington?
Yes. Yep, great question. So a lot of the construction was put into the property before I actually purchased it. But yeah, it wasn't something I was willing to consider. I didn't really think that structurally taking a section of the deck away and trying to install a pool there would be something that would structurally be sound. So, but yeah, considering possibly removing some of the driveway, that could be a consideration, but I'd rather not personally go ahead and do anything like that. So,
Is the pool going to be accessible from the deck?
yes, the plan is that the pool is going to be accessible from the deck. Yeah.
So it's being integrated into the existing structure, basically.
It's going to sit next to it within a foot distance of the deck itself. So yeah, it's not going to be integrated into the deck.
But it's not going to be it's not going to have its own access. You're going to be accessing it from the deck, or does it have?
So I will have an access to the side of the pool itself.
Okay.
To be able to access it from outside the pool. Yeah. So.
Okay, I just didn't want to know that. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's all I have, Chairman.
All right, thank you, Mr. Glee. It does look on the survey that it kind of looks like it fits in there perfectly. Was that designed after the fact or?
No, I'm an agronomist at trade, so I will say that although my landscape area does fall below that 45%, I have a very diverse landscape with a lot of flowering plants and shrubs. So yeah, I'm just looking for something that fits well into the landscape and looks nice and can be used and accessible to my family.
Okay. That's the only variance needed, Mr. Gill, right? It's the landscape. It's a deficiency.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. Board members, question once around. Anybody? All right. I see no one. I'm going to go to the public at this point, Mr. Sherrington. This is matter 21-2023Z. The location is 270 Raritan Boulevard for the installation of a pool. In doing so, once again, this would create a landscape area ratio problem and a deficiency. But once again, there's not much area. It seems that they can work with other than that. I can understand his reason for wanting to put a pool in his own home. Again, the numbers are in front of you if you are watching us this evening. And if you have a comment or you would like to make a comment on this particular application, please call one of those numbers now. This will be the only time you would be able to do so. We will close this matter out this evening. Let's see, is anyone in queue?
There are no raised hands.
Okay. If we are given enough time, Mr. Clancy?
Mr. Chairman, I believe we have. It's been up over a minute and no hands so far. I think we're safe to close public portion.
All right, thank you. Ms. Seed, once again, no one's in queue?
No.
Okay, I'm going to close the public portion. Is there anything you will finally want to say to us, Mr. Sherrington, before I call for a vote?
No, I just want to say I want to thank the township and members of staff that assisted me with this application. They were very helpful, and yep, that's all I had to say.
Thank you. Mr. Clancy, would you advise the board on this vote, landscape deficiency right area ratio?
Yes, this looks like it's a single variance for the landscape deficiency. 45% is the minimum, and for the sake of clarity, I believe we're going with the proposal of 39.8% proposed. Correct, Mr. Gill?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not what was originally on the application of 42.2. It's a little bit smaller than that. It is a 260 square foot deficiency, and as Mr. Gill said, the lot is already deficient in that regard.
All right, thank you, board members. You've heard the explanation from the board attorney. Someone interested in moving this application for approval?
Chevalier will move it.
Is there a second to Ms. Chevalier?
Testaverde.
Ms. Testaverde is second. Roll call, please.
Ms. Chevalier,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
Yes.
Ms. Andrews,
Yes.
Ms. Testaverde,
Yes.
Mr. Izzo,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes, Mr. Sherrington, good luck on putting your pool in there for your family.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members of the board.
Once again, the resolution will be available at the next meeting. All right. All right, board members, final application for the evening, 28-2023Z. This is Fadi Salama. This is in the R6 zone, block 15585, lot 664. The physical location, 266 Cindy Street, for a shed, the pool requiring C variance. Applicant seeks variance relief for existing shed and pool constructed in the rear yard of their property. So this, I guess, is a little bit. Is do you have someone represent? Oh, there you are, sir. Right in the bottom, right? Mr. Salama?
Yes,
Are you going to be the only one testifying this evening?
yes.
And you have no professionals with you, right?
I'm sorry.
You have no professionals that are going to be testifying, right? Just
No.
you. Okay. Board
That's
attorney,
correct.
swear you in.
Yes, thank you. Just leave your right hand up. And do you solemnly swear any testimony that you provide before this board will be the truth, the whole truth?
Yes.
Okay, you can just put your hand down and state your name, please, for the board.
Okay. Good evening. Beginning of 2020, my wife got accepted to school to USC in California, and she has to leave me with 3 kids for a couple of years. And COVID hit, obviously, and made it worse for me. So I made a pool for my kids. I built up a pool attached to the previously permitted patio, and I built up a roof on top of the patio so I can give them a shade because it's so sunny in the backyard. And I'm here tonight for my kids to just ask them for relief. That's basically what I'm here for.
Okay, well, you were unaware that you had to get permission to do this, or that it would be in violation of a variance?
I did, but honestly, my hand was so tight. I brought up my mother-in-law from my country to help me out, and she ended up with a stroke.
Oh.
So instead of she helped me out with the kids, I end up with 3 kids and a disabled woman in the house. I'm sorry, but it's a dramatic, but I had to say it.
No doubt whatsoever, and I'm sure that it did provide some relief, I guess, for your children as well.
Yes.
But let me see what's going on. I'll ask Mr. Gill.
Thank you, Chairman. As Mr. Salama indicated, there's 2 conditions that are before us this evening, actually 2 structures with several conditions. And the application, though the application before you this evening is one application for both, when it was presented to us, it was presented in 2 applications. So I have 2 separate denial applications, and I'll be reading from both of them. The first is with regard to the gazebo. The applicant proposes the construction of a 16 by 16, or proposes to legitimize a gazebo that was constructed 16 by 16 approximately, 6 inches from the rear property line and 2.5 feet from the side property line, where a minimum of 10 foot is required for both the side and the rear yard setbacks. So with regard to the gazebo, we have a side yard deficiency and we have a rear yard deficiency. The applicant previously applied for a permit to install a patio. That patio was installed, I want to say a year and a half prior to the installation of this gazebo and prior to the COVID pandemic. So I was familiar with Mr. Salama. We had some dealings. So I was a little surprised when this came in as a complaint, and one of my guys picked it up in the enforcement side of it. With regard to the pool was a 12 by 20 pool that the applicant installed 5 foot from the property line, where a minimum of 6 foot is required. The applicant will require a C variance for the setback there. One of the things that I would mention is that regardless of what the township approves in terms of variances, or considers in terms of variances, is the state uniform construction code. The state uniform construction code has certain requirements insofar as it adopts the IBC, IRC, and several other codes that make up the quote unquote building codes of the township. I did express through Danny, because Danny dealt with Mr. Salama, our associate zoning officer, that I had some concerns from a uniform construction perspective. My understanding is that the state requires a 6 foot setback for pools. Notwithstanding that, the applicant is presented here for a 5 foot setback. And I just kind of want to put him on notice that regardless of what the township agrees to, he'll have to comply with whatever the state requires through the building code. The zoning board obviously doesn't have the jurisdiction to override the uniform construction code. And I tried to get answers for that, but I wasn't prepared for this application. I do apologize, Chairman. But that's the reason the applicant is here this evening.
Mr. Gill, that's in reference to the pool or the gazebo or both?
That's in reference to the pool specifically.
Okay.
My understanding is that our standards used to be a 10 foot setback, but we were routinely granting variances because the state allows pools to be 6 feet from the property line. That's the only reason that number kind of sticks in my head. So I do have that as a concern, and I just kind of want to put that on the record for the applicant's sake so that, you know, it was discussed.
And this isn't above ground, right?
This is an above ground pool.
So it could be moved if necessary.
I don't know if he has the room. I would defer to Mr. Salama because the deck steps there are pretty close.
Yeah.
And I don't see on the survey a setback that I could measure to see kind of where he's at. But in theory, he could shift it a foot. Obviously, there would be some expense and a burden, but again, that's the uniform construction code. When he gets the permits for construction, they're going to require compliance.
And he's at, it looks like 2.8, is that?
He's at 2.8 to
Yeah.
the fence line, but the fence is approximately 2 and change from the property line, and it kind of varies a little bit. So he's right around the 5 foot mark from the property line.
And if I'm looking at the survey with the pool and the gazebo placed in it, would you opine that it may fit on the other corner of the property?
Without assessing,
and I don't want to put you on the
there-
spot, but would
I
that?
know that there's some, Mr. Salama, if I'm not mistaken, there are some trees in the back left-hand corner of the property,
There is
correct?
trees, and also there is a sprinkler system on the rest of the property too. That's
Okay.
what we need.
I do recall when I did the site inspection for the original patio, that there was, I think, 1 or 2 large oak trees or maple, like very large trees in the
Correct.
back left-hand corner. So I'm just gonna
That is
pull, yeah, I just pulled up the aerial. Chairman, I obviously can't share that, but I would recommend anyone who has access to check it. There are 2 very large trees in the back left-hand corner, just behind the deck, kind of in the middle of the yard, and then 1 in the back left-hand corner. It also appears that the applicant has like a trampoline or something there right now, but that would be, I think, where you're referring to in terms of a potential alternate location. And while, yes, I think theoretically it could fit there, there might be some conflict because of the trees.
Well, I did see what looks like the netting for a trampoline as you look at this house to the left-hand side, but I would think that could be moved. If I understand,
Oh, definitely.
If I understand you correctly, are you saying that with UCC they're going to fail him anyway?
I'm suspecting that they may require him to move it at the very least a foot, but I don't want to flavor the application such that we mandate that. I just wanted the board to be aware and primarily the applicant, because if the board thought that there was nothing wrong with this and the board determines that they want to act favorably on the application, I just don't want the applicant to then say, but the board gave me a variance.
Right.
I just want him to be aware that the Uniform Construction Code trumps in that regard.
Mr. Clancy, I know you're shaking your head, and I've looked for some advice on this because, right, we could go and say if we could deny or we could approve, and it still may not be enough.
Yes, that seems to be the concern. I think Mr. Gill hit the nail on the head. Somewhat regardless of how the board acts in regard to the pool setback. If a variance were to be granted, it wouldn't legitimize the pool from a permit standard because of the UCC is going to trump this. So it's almost like a moot point to some degree.
Well, obviously, there's two ways to go on that particular part of the application, right? I mean, either we can approve if it's approved by the UCC, or we can deny, and in which case he's not going to get a shot at it, right?
So the pool setback, I believe, is 6 foot in this zone, which is what comports with the UCC, if I understand it correctly. So yeah, the board could vote to grant a variance here and condition it upon meeting the UCC.
Right.
If we already know it's not going to meet the UCC, I'm not sure, how that sits, but.
Well, if I can, Mr. Clancy and Chairman, one of the reasons I said that it's really more to bring it to the applicant's attention is because the Uniform Construction Code does have a procedure called a variation, where they seek an alternate arrangement that doesn't comport with the building code. And it's very similar functionally in the way that a variance works and the zoning board works. It's heard by the Construction Board of Appeals. And the purpose of a variation is for them, like when they can't comply with the ordinance, that they can do something to the project that circumvents the issue such that it still meets the requirements from a safety perspective, typically. So I don't know that this property will meet that criteria, this condition, but because of the fact, I'm kind of inclined to just put on the record for you that I agree with you, Chairman, that I think rather than removing the potential for him to get a shot at it through the Uniform Construction Code, that if you were to condition any approval on that, I think that would kind of button it up nicely.
Right. Well,
If the board is,
that's if the board approves it. I was
yes,
thinking.
if the board acted favorably.
Right. Any further advice, Mr. Clancy, or would you, if there's an approval, should we go down that route to?
I think it would be wise to condition the approval upon, compliance with the UCC, or approval under the UCC may be the better way to word it, because effectively the board would be putting the applicant on notice that there's some additional steps
Right.
that need to be taken here to fully comport.
Okay. Well, let me go to the board. I haven't gone to the board to see if they have any comments or questions. Anyone want to weigh in? Mr. Rizzo, go ahead.
On the gazebo, it's kind of butted up in the rear to that fence. Does he need any distance between the gazebo and the fence?
Definitely, Commissioner. He should have a 10-foot setback, and he's only proposing 6 inches. So that's why he's here. That's part of the relief that he's seeking. He wouldn't be able to put this gazebo in his property in the way it's configured. He was taking advantage. Yeah, unless he went smaller. Yeah. So this gazebo really isn't possible on this site in a conforming fashion.
Mr. Gill, I noticed there was comments about the height of it. I don't think we ever got on the record. It looks rather from the street view.
The concern that we had, and actually it would be, thank you, Chairman, it would be a good idea for him to put it on the record. Accessory structures are limited to 15 feet in height, which is substantial for most accessory structures in most single family settings. But the patio was built on a small retaining wall, so it is elevated above the grade. So the gazebo is built and integrated to the top of that structure, and there is approximately a 2-foot height. I think it was 2 or 3 foot. Mr. Salama could clarify for me. That'd be great. But there was a 2 or 3 foot retaining wall that adds to the height of the overall structure. So if it is a 10 or 12 foot structure, it's going to be very close to the limit. We did not call it out as a variance, but thank you for bringing that up. I did forget about that.
Mr. Salama, would you please go on the record and tell us how the tall that is? The
You're
gazebo?
breaking up, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that, you're breaking up.
Okay, would you tell us how high the gazebo is?
It's about 12, the highest point on it, it's about 12 feet from the ground to the top, the highest point, like the. And from
When
the
you,
side, it's about,
when you say from the ground, do you mean from the ground at the top of the patio or at the
Yeah, on
bottom
the
of the
top.
retaining wall?
the top of the patio.
And how tall is the retaining wall at the highest point?
I believe it's a 28 inches.
Okay, so he'd still be under.
Okay.
Ooh.
He'd be at 14 feet and change. I want to say it was like 30 inches because I remember there was a back and forth with me and Mr. Salama because he was trying to avoid having to get engineer drawings for a construction permit. He wanted it to be more like a landscape wall, and at that point, it needs to be under 3 feet in height for him to do that.
Mr. Slama,
So-
is it permanent? Has it been?
Yeah, it's a build-up. It's like a roof and some. beams
Well, no, I can
inside.
see that point, but was this a commercial buy that you just replaced in there that could be moved or it was fully
No,
constructed?
this is structured like in the, like, it's like 4x4 structure into the.
Okay. All right. Anything else you want, Mr. Gill?
Yeah, I just want to
No,
add that I'm sorry. I just want to add that I went to everybody in the area. I spoke with everybody, and it seems like nobody had any issue. Only one person, York Street, the other side, he said so far he doesn't have a problem, but he might be on the call. But that's about it. And also, since our house is about 4 feet lower than York Street, like we're in the lower side from
Right.
York Street. So that's all.
Homes are much higher behind you.
Correct.
Mr. Gill, did you want anything else from Mr. Salama on the record?
no, Chairman, thank you again.
Board members, questions for the applicant or perhaps questions for Mr. Gill? No, I see none. Right. Mr. Salam, I'm going to go to a public portion, at which time I'm going to come back and ask you if you want me to take a vote on this, okay? This is matter 28-2023Z. Location is 266 Cindy Street for a shed and a pool, both requiring variance for I think the side yard setback and a rear yard setback, and the pool is too close to the lot line as well. If anybody has any comments, questions, they want to speak on this matter, their phone numbers in front of you, you should see on any screen you're watching us on. Please call one of those now. This will be the only opportunity you'll have to make it to enter into a public portion. This matter will probably be decided tonight, should the applicant ask for a vote. Ms. C, is anyone in queue?
There are no raised hands, Chairman.
We'll just give it a brief moment here. Once again, folks, this would be the time to call if you want to speak on this matter. It will not, it will be finished this evening, most likely. So the only opportunity to make a public comment. Mr. Clancy, how are we on the advisory time?
We're over a minute now, Chairman, if the numbers have been up, I think it's safe to close the public portion.
Okay, Ms. C, is anyone called?
There are no raised hands.
Thank you very much. I'm going to close the public portion. I'll come back to you, Mr. Salama. Any final comments you want to make?
Kids just off of school as of today, and they just want to enjoy the pool. That's
All right.
that's about it.
I appreciate your honesty. Would you like me to take a vote? In other words, you don't want to seek any other remedy. You're planning on leaving things as they are. I will tell you that we're going to ask in the resolution to, as part of that resolution, to say that only if it's in compliance with the UCC. So I don't know how that's going to fare for you, but I don't know that the board's going to vote in favor of it. I'm just saying it would be part of the resolution should we vote favorably. Mr. Izzo, go ahead.
Getting back to the gazebo, maybe Mr. Gill could help me on that. I guess the back end of the gazebo, the two posts are going to be mounted on top of the retaining wall. Is that going to hold weight of snow? Is that a safe way to have that mounted?
The back portion doesn't have the retaining wall comes across the front of it, front of it. There's a planter behind it. But regardless of the size of the structure, that, because it's a gazebo and it's subjected to wind loads and snow loads, the building department is going to require permitting on that. And I think the building department will determine whether or not he's constructed it safely. And regardless of what variances we grant, in that situation, to my knowledge, there's no setback issues with the building code. They're just going to say if he needs to put additional footings or he has to brace it somehow, they're going to require that when they do inspections.
Can I say something? The back
Yes,
post,
absolutely.
the back posts are already, I had them in the ground about a foot and a half high with cement and stuff. So all the back posts are in the ground.
Well, Mr. Gill is just advising you that you know, we may be able to give approval, but the building department, and the inspectors have to check that. We don't have jurisdiction over that matter. Okay? Okay. Anybody else before I'm going to ask for a vote here? None? Okay. Is someone in favor of moving this with the condition that it would have to be compliant with the UCC with reference to the pool? Someone want to move it or no? Move for or against?
Chevalier to move it with the condition and approval.
Okay, is there a second?
Andrews with the condition.
Thank you very much, Ms. Andrews. Roll call, please.
Ms. Chevalier,
Yes.
Mr. Scogno,
Yes.
Ms. Andrews,
Yes.
Ms. Testaverde,
Yes, with the condition.
Mr. Izzo,
Yes, on both.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes, once again, with the conditions, I understand that you have, you know, some hardship with the family. I wish you the best of luck, but once again, we don't control that, sir. So it's going to be totally up to the building inspectors. Okay? There'll be a resolution available next month.
So am I allowed to keep them for now or?
Yes, well, it's there. I wouldn't do anything right now. They would, once you get a resolution, they will set a time, I'm assuming, that they will come and inspect. That's out of our hands, sir.
Understood. Thank
Okay.
you so much.
All right, we
you.
thank you for your appearance this evening.
Thank you.
We have reached the end of the agenda with the exception of general public comments. Is anyone in queue at this point, Ms. C, for general public comments?
There are no raised hands, Chairman.
Okay, those numbers are up for the public to call if you have a particular item you'd like to speak about this evening concerning zoning. Other than that, is there anything, Mr. Clancy, that from the legal end you want to advise the board on tonight?
No new information to pass along. These three that were approved tonight, we'll put resolutions together for the next meeting, so they'll go on to the record.
Right.
That's about it.
Okay. Ms. C, anything you want to tell the board?
Just a reminder, our next meeting is our special meeting. It is virtual and that will be on Monday, June 26th.
Okay, don't forget that one, board. Yeah, that's coming up a week from this coming Monday. And that will be a virtual meeting for special reasons.
Oh, it's virtual.
All right, having said that, is anyone else called in, Ms. C?
No, Chairman.
Okay, I'm going to close the general public comments portion. Any comments from any of the members? Seeing none, I guess we will see each other on the 27th. If you shouldn't be at the meeting, I wish everybody a healthy, happy holiday. But it's more likely that we will see each other on the 27th. Mr. Clancy, any?
26, Chairman.
What did I say, 27? 26. Okay. Anybody else? Will someone want to move for an adjournment?
Chairman.
All in favor?
Aye.
We stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Right.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.